You ever walk into a room and feel the air shift, but no one says a word? No loud words, no direct hate, just a strange tension, like your presence unsettles something in them. Sometimes the deepest forms of rejection aren't spoken. They're felt, subtle, quiet, invisible to most, but not to you. Today we're going to talk about something we don't always have words for, but we feel it, deep in the gut, the silent ways people show they want you gone, without ever saying it out loud. And if you've felt this, not just once but in waves, know this. It doesn't mean you're broken. It might mean you're growing. And the discomfort you're sensing, it's more about them than it is about you. As we move through this together, take your time. Don't rush. Each of these truths builds into the next. Skip one, and you might miss the one that holds your clarity. And if this speaks to something real in you, you're not alone. This space is built for quiet strength. Feel free to join the journey. We grow slow, we grow real, and we grow deep. We live in a time where surface connection is everywhere, but safe connection, that's rare. So what happens when you start healing, evolving, or standing in your peace, and the people around you change? What if I told you that the very things you're doing to grow might be why they pull away? I'll share 5 signs. And that last one, it flipped the whole story for me. I still sit with it weekly. Well, 1, they withhold support when you're winning. You ever share good news with someone and the room goes quiet? You just told them about the job you landed, the course you completed, the habit you broke, and you're met with silence. Not a, wow, I'm proud of you. Not a, how did it feel? Just nothing. Or worse, one of those half-hearted, dry, that's nice replies that feel like they were just trying to fill the air, not celebrate you. It's confusing, right? Because we're taught to expect resistance when we fail, but not when we win. You expect pushback when you're at your lowest. But what do you do when the real resistance comes? When you're finally rising? Sometimes people don't show their envy with words. They show it with silence, with distance, with a subtle shift in the energy. They stop asking how your day went. They change the subject when you mention something positive, or they go oddly quiet after you post a win online. It's not always loud jealousy. Sometimes it's quiet resentment, wrapped in apathy. People only resent growth they refuse to choose for themselves. You didn't make them feel small, but your growth reminded them of their own stagnation. And not everyone is mature enough to sit with that discomfort without projecting it outward. It's not your success they hate. It's what your success reflects back at them. It's not that you're bragging. It's not that you're loud. You were just proud. And maybe for the first time, you gave yourself permission to shine without shrinking. But then you saw it. The side eyes, the fake laughs, the avoidance. You began to notice that your happiness didn't land well with everyone. That's when it hits you. Your growth made them uncomfortable, not because you wronged them, but because you moved and they stayed still. So let me ask you, who got quiet when you got loud about your healing? Who was eager to console you in your suffering, but vanished when you stopped needing to be saved? Because sometimes we mistake connection for loyalty, when really it was just proximity to our pain. The moment you started rising, the moment you outgrew the shared wound, they left. Sometimes people aren't against you. They're against themselves, against the version of you that reminds them they've stayed stagnant. And your peace, your purpose, your passion, all of it becomes a mirror. One they didn't ask for, one they weren't ready to look into. But here's the part that stings even deeper. Sometimes it's not silence that hurts. It's the sarcasm that comes next. The jokes, the little jabs, the "wow, you think you're better now?" energy, wrapped in laughter but rooted in bitterness. And that's what we'll talk about next. Because not all mockery is playful. Some of it is pain in disguise. 2. They mock your values disguised as jokes. It starts small. You begin taking your peace seriously. You pull back from drama. You say no when something doesn't align. You start journaling, meditating, maybe even just going to bed earlier. You're doing the work, inner work, quiet work, but powerful work. And then one day, you hear it. "Oh, look, here comes the Zen master. You're too deep these days. Lighten up." "Wow, journaling again? Who hurt you?" They laugh, but it's not really funny, is it? It's not teasing with love. It's teasing with tension. The Stoic truth. Ridicule is the weapon of the insecure. People who haven't done their own healing will often mock the healing in others, because watching you get serious about your peace makes them painfully aware of how long they've avoided their own, dismissing what they can't understand. We live in a world where numbness is normalized, where people bond over burnout, mock mindfulness, and treat emotional maturity like it's too much. So when you start speaking differently, protecting your space, being intentional, it threatens the dynamic. You're not fun anymore. You're not easy to manipulate. You're not available on demand. And so they start making jokes, not because you're ridiculous, but because your growth is real, and that scares them. Some people don't know how to meet your depth, so they minimize it instead. They shrink your self-awareness down to a meme. They turn your progress into a punchline. And slowly you start wondering, am I being too much, too serious, too spiritual? But ask yourself this, too much for who? Have you ever downplayed your healing just to stay liked? Have you ever dimmed your light just so someone else didn't have to squint? The truth is, the people who laugh at your growth haven't dared to face their own pain yet. They'll mock what they're not ready to practice, and deep down, they know it. You're not being cold, you're being clear. You're not being too deep, you're being grounded. You've simply outgrown shallow waters. And the moment you begin to honor that shift is the moment their jokes stop landing. Because once you're anchored in truth, you stop needing approval from people who fear it. But there's a more subtle kind of sabotage, one that doesn't joke. It rewrites. It reshapes your narrative behind your back. Because when mocking doesn't work, some people start telling their version of your story. And that's where we're headed next. 3. They reframe your growth as selfishness. You start saying no more often. You protect your time. You stop explaining your every move. You're softer with yourself and stronger with others. You're not angry. You're not bitter. You're just clear. And suddenly you hear it. You've changed. You don't call like you used to. You're so into yourself now. And just like that, your growth becomes a problem. The self that offends others is often the self that's finally free. Freedom doesn't always come with celebration. Sometimes it comes with confusion, resistance, even resentment. Because you're no longer performing. You've stopped being the you that was convenient for everyone else. There's a difference between selfishness and sovereignty. Selfishness is rooted in greed. Sovereignty is rooted in self-respect. You're not pushing people away. You're pulling yourself inward. And that makes people uncomfortable. Because when they could predict you, they could control you. Most people don't fear your transformation. They fear losing control over the version of you they could manipulate, guilt, or over-rely on. They didn't love the real you. They loved access to you. Your silence used to serve them. Now your silence serves you. What version of yourself are you no longer willing to apologize for? The one that needs rest? The one that sets boundaries without guilt? The one that doesn't bend just to be easy to love? Because here's the truth. You're allowed to choose peace over performance. You're allowed to change without having to defend that change to people who only love the older, more exhausted you. You can't heal and stay who you were. Real growth, it changes your posture, your pace, your priorities. And when that happens, the people who benefited from your burnout might call it selfish. But their labels don't define your liberation. You're not too distant. You're just no longer pretending to be close to what drains you. You're not too much into yourself. You're just finally centered. And here's what happens next. When they realize you're no longer who they can guilt, interrupt, or rely on emotionally, they don't always lash out. Sometimes they just disappear. And that silence, it's louder than any insult. 4, they withdraw without explanation. You text, nothing. You reach out again, still nothing. No argument, no fallout, just distance. No closure, no confrontation, no clarity. They're just gone. This is emotional ghosting. Not always out of malice, not even always from a place of hate. Sometimes it's discomfort because your growth started to mirror everything they were avoiding in themselves. The Stoic truth. Some exits are silent because the ego can't admit its envy. They didn't want to compete with your peace because your stability, your healing, disrupted the chaos they were comfortable in. And instead of facing that contrast, they left. Quietly, abruptly, without explanation. You're not too much. You're not too distant. You're just different now. You started tending to your inner world instead of outsourcing your worth. You stopped showing up out of guilt. You stopped shrinking just to fit their mold. They weren't ready for the version of you that no longer needed their validation to breathe. They didn't leave because you did something wrong. They left because you did something right. You stopped abandoning yourself just to keep being chosen. And here's the deeper ache. You realize they never truly saw you. They saw who you were before you chose yourself. So you ask yourself, was I only lovable when I was available to be used? Did they only care when I was easy to access and easier to overlook? Was it ever real, or was I just convenient? What's more painful, being disliked for who you are now, or being loved for who you're not? Because when they vanish, no reply, no explanation, it leaves a gap that makes you question your worth. But here's the reminder. Their absence doesn't diminish your presence. Their silence isn't your fault. It's their escape. When they walk away, let them. Don't chase what chooses distance. You deserve people who don't disappear when you evolve. People who don't get quiet when your joy gets loud. People who can sit with your depth without turning it into discomfort. Let them go. Let them ghost. Let them grieve the version of you they lost access to. Because the version of you they left behind is the one you outgrew. And now we arrive at the quietest one, the most subtle, the most painful. It's not what they say that hurts. It's the stories they start telling others when they realize they can't reach you anymore. 5, they pretend you don't exist anymore. They don't mention you anymore. No birthday call, no tag, no random memory shared. You're not invited, not acknowledged, not celebrated. It's like you've been erased. And the worst part, you didn't even do anything wrong. It's not hate. It's not even conflict. It's something more slippery, more subtle. It's omission. To be quietly resented is to be deeply seen, because sometimes silence is louder than gossip. Sometimes being erased is just their way of saying, you grew in a direction they refuse to follow. What they can't mention, they can't accept. Your name reminds them of the chapter they chose to skip. Your presence reminds them of the progress they haven't made. So instead of facing that, they bury you. Pretend you're no longer relevant, no longer needed, no longer part of the story. You don't see it at first, but then the pattern reveals itself. You became invisible in their world, not because you disappeared, but because you outgrew the space you once shared. Your evolution became a mirror, and they weren't ready to look into it. So they turned their back, not on you as a person, but on the truth you started to reflect. Your healing made them uncomfortable. Your clarity made their confusion obvious. Your joy started sounding like rebellion to people who were invested in your struggle. So they rewrote the story without you. What if your absence in their life is the loudest evidence of your growth? You didn't slam the door. You didn't seek revenge. You just kept going. And the further you walked in your truth, the more your silence started speaking volumes. Here's the deeper truth. They still think about you, but now it's too painful to admit. Because if they admit you mattered, they'd have to admit what they lost. But here's the reframe that changes everything. You weren't erased, you evolved. You didn't vanish. You outgrew visibility in spaces too small for your healing. And your life, your choices, your peace, they still echo where your name isn't spoken. You don't need to be celebrated to be powerful. You don't need to be mentioned to matter. Sometimes the biggest proof of growth is who no longer knows how to reach you. If you're still here, it says a lot about your heart. This isn't easy stuff. It stirs memories, opens old wounds. But you're still listening, and that means you're choosing awareness over comfort. You're not running from hard truths, you're facing them. If that's you, stay close. This space is built for you. Because healing doesn't just happen in comfort, it happens in courage. Have you ever noticed someone slowly pulling away as you started healing? What's one silent sign that helped you finally see the truth? Let us know in the comments section. Take care of your peace, tend to your energy, and remember, your clarity is sacred.